Hello to all Halton District School Board staff and students tuning in, and welcome to the Getting Ready for Experiential Learning virtual series. My name is Lisa Galley, and I'm the Acting Instructional Program Leader for Student Supports and Regional Programs for the Halton District School Board. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today to learn more about the Cooperative Education Program in the Halton District School Board, to learn what it's all about and the many ways in which it can support your pathway planning, regardless of which post-secondary pathway you choose to pursue. As we always like to do before any sort of learning opportunity in the Halton District School Board, we'll start by honoring the land and territory on which we learn and live and work and grow as Halton staff, students, and families. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. One of the most important things we can do as we work toward a more equitable and inclusive school, community, country, and world is to keep our learning moving forward. The HDSB is hosting the Directors Panel on Identity, Inclusion, and Human Rights for students, staff, and community members to raise awareness on historical and contemporary issues of identity, inclusion, and human rights. The first session took place on Monday, February 7th at 6 p.m. with a focus on anti-Semitism. A recording of the session can be accessed from the Halton District School Board's website. Future sessions will focus on topics of Black excellence, transgender awareness, Indigenous perspectives on decolonizing education and land, and perspectives on Islam. Dates and times will be shared in the weeks to come, with details posted on www.hdsb.ca. This series is called Getting Ready for Experiential Learning. So what is experiential learning? It's a learning approach in which students actively engage in a learning experience. We call that the what, in which they also reflect thoughtfully on why that experience was relevant to them, the so what, and how they would apply that learning to the world around them. That's called the now what. Experiential learning is a trusted and valued approach to developing knowledge and skills that support retention of learning, the ability to make meaningful connections to authentic situations in the real world, supports student well-being, and offers many opportunities for students to learn about who they are and what they'd like to do after high school and beyond. Today is the second of a 5-part virtual series for grades 7 to 12 HDSB students and their families to learn more about ways to engage in exciting experiential learning opportunities in their high school and local community. Tune in every Thursday until March 3rd from 4:30 to 5:15 p.m. to learn about the topic of the week and to hear from HDSB and community experts sharing valuable information and advice and answering your questions. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome the Halton District School Board's co-op team to share more about cooperative education and the many fantastic opportunities it provides to grade 11, 12, and 12 plus students as they explore various careers of interest through hands-on experiential learning. It's never too early to learn about these programs and plan ahead. So we hope that our younger viewers and families with younger students also find value in hearing about the opportunities, even if they may be a few years away. I would like to welcome April Valera, co-op teacher, Rick Pasco, co-op teacher, and Mia C., Iroquois Ridge High School student and successful co-op student. If you have any questions during the live stream session that you would like to ask the co-op team, please feel free to go to the link that you see on your screen, bit.ly/ELSeriesFeb10. We'll have your questions answered in real time at the end of today's presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Rick Pasco to talk about what cooperative education is all about.
Thanks, Lisa. Yes, hi everyone. My name's Rick Pascal. My role is a co-op teacher at White Oak Secondary School in Oakville. I've been doing that for a couple of years now and have some history and guidance as well. So take that knowledge with me to the co-op program. And today I wanted to speak with you a little bit about what co-op is, what co-op education looks like, and where we can do some of our placements. So first of all, what co-op is, it's a partnership really between, it's a three-way partnership between school, student, and what we call a community partner or an employer. And that partnership is what allows the students to gain some experiential learning and take a lot of theory that they have in classrooms and extend that into the community into a real work environment. This option for co-op is typically a grade 11, 12, or returning 12. Those are the students that we target mostly in our programs. Now, the co-op placements are available to all pathways, so it doesn't matter what your direction out of high school is, whether that's apprenticeship, college, community, or university, and also the workplace. We have options for you in which we can place you or help you navigate finding a co-op placement. Typically, students enter the program through course selection in my blueprint, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But you may be wondering, when can I do my co-op? Co-ops often happen either through a morning placement, an afternoon placement, and some of our students even do an all-day placement. There are opportunities for other specialized programs to pursue co-ops in the summer and sometimes at night. So now on to the why. Why would I want to take co-op? When I meet students in my class for the first day, this is one of the questions that we engage in and we often talk about. And I often ask them, why are they taking co-op? And most times they say, I'd like to test drive a career, but I don't really know how to go about that. I work with them. We talk about networking. We explore different ways in which that can happen. In particular, we're looking to fit them with a particular career, or sometimes students are working already on a part time job and wish to use that to earn some credits. Here's the thing, folks, you can earn credits while going to work. You can earn credits by being outside of the building. And that's what co-op really is taking all of your learning that's happened at school, all of that time you've been sitting in a seat and getting out of those seats and engaging in your community. The chance to earn 2 credits is a great opportunity for everyone. The other thing that happens while out doing your co-op is it's an opportunity to network in the field that you're really interested in. For example, if I'm looking to pursue something in healthcare or automotive, it doesn't matter what you're interested in. We can often find you a placement where you can job shadow somebody that's been through that path, that has been through the educational process, can talk to you as a student and say, if I could go back to when I was in high school, here are some of the pitfalls I encountered. So, co op isn't just about taking my learning from school into the community and going to work. It's also discovering what your path might be. It's also discovering what opportunities I could lead to. Often, our co op students have opportunities afterwards to become employed at some of the places where they actually did their placements. This happens more often than not. Last semester, I've had 2 students that the employers wanted to keep them on, and they said, "We don't care that they're 16 years old. We'd like to hire them right now." So the opportunities from co-op are vast, from earning credits to experience and also networking and meeting people that are in the field that you might be interested in pursuing down the road. Next, where can I do my co-op placement? This is often a question as soon as students walk into the classroom. That's the immediate thing. Where can I go? How can I what where can I go to work? Now, My experience has been in Oakville, so I've provided you some logos and some examples of where students have gone to work in Oakville, but every community, whether it's Burlington or in the north, similar opportunities are available. We've had students placed in schools, as you can see up on the image there. We have individuals that they'd like to get into education and working with youngsters. So we have, where I'm at White Oaks, we have a few elementary schools in the neighboring area, and the students walk from White Oaks and they head over to their placement. We've had students working in auto shops. I had a young man work and engage with Porsche, and I was like, you can try. We can go that route, but I don't know. I've never placed somebody at Porsche, and sure enough, he got into Porsche and has worked his way up from sweeping floors and then changing tires, and now he has been hired by them, full apprenticeship, and is off to Germany getting trained as a Porsche tech engineer. So the opportunities are endless, and you never know where this co-op can lead. Um, the other opportunities that you see up there, we've historically had partnerships with Halton paramedics. I've had students placed in vet clinics. Um, all kinds of roles are available out there, and it's just a matter of engaging. Everything you ever wanted to do um, is out there for you, and we can help you find some sort of meaningful opportunity through co-op that helps you engage in your community and generate some work related skills. I think this is April. I think this is your slide.
Thanks, Rick.
No problem.
Hi, my name is April Valera. I was at Iroquois Ridge. I'm currently with a new program with the board through Sheridan College. But with regards to structure of co-op, you begin with in-class learning. We call that pre-placement for typically about 2 weeks. So that's when we go through things with regards to work preparedness, writing cover letters or updating resumes. Some of you, by the time you get to grade 10 in your careers class, you would have at least drafted a resume, and then we tweak it a little bit more, tailor it specifically to your job or potential placement, develop job search and self-marketing skills. We also do health and safety. That's actually one of the first things we try and address, because a number of our employers, that's their top question is, have they had any training, right, with regards to health and safety? And then we usually say yes. That's the first thing we get out of the way for the students. And then you probably will get an additional one depending on the field you're partnering with regards to a co-op placement. You also get to know your rights as a worker, which always seems to be quite the mind-blowing event when we are looking through those documents. We're like, I have a right to say no. And we're like, yes. So we discuss those types of aspects within the work environment, and in general, how to navigate the world of work. So towards the end, and there's 2 reporting periods for the employers. It works very much similar to any courses in any of our high schools, where there's 2 opportunities to be assessed, and that's done through the creation of your learning plan. It changes in the way that you as a student get to have quite a significant input in what you'd like to do while you're at that placement. So over the years, sometimes it was employer driven, but within the last few, I was going to say 2018, I think, was when we updated the co-op curriculum, and that's when that initiative took place of like, yes, students came here for a purpose, so your input is equally as valid as what that employer wants you to experience at that workplace. So structure of co-op, right, within the community placement, majority of your term is spent at your learning placement. So if you remember, I said our pre-placement tends to take place 2 weeks. Then we try to get you at your placement established, and what happens is you're there for most of the semester, right, which also requires planning with you with regards to where your co-op placement will be. So I tend to tell my students in the classroom, it really is to your heart's desire. Some students they've gone to McMaster. There's one a couple of years ago who found a research kind of group and opportunity and would travel to McMaster through lunch and then just stay a little bit longer in the afternoon. I've had some students who went to like Mount Sinai. So depending on where you are, right, that community placement is going to be so rich for you. Then you've got your integration days. So you're there, you're with us for pre-placement for 2 weeks, then you're out in your placement, and once a month at the Ridge, we tend to do it on the Wednesdays. You go back, kind of touch base with your teacher, touch base with your classmates, do a little bit of reflecting as to what's going on, maybe prepare that learning plan for your employer, right? So they're ready to assess you with regards to your progress so far. Then you have a portfolio creation as well, right? Where you take bits and pieces. And I know for me, I always say, take some pictures of your duties, right? Take a picture of the building. That kind of helps, especially with the final 30 projects. And we try to mimic the world of work, even with that final performance task. So exit interviews, presentations. I know for the Ridge, we used the opportunity when we were able to present to the students. We've been on hold for the last couple of years. We actually put them and matched them up with either a careers class, or if that student happens to have had like a placement with Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital, which is one of our regional placements, we'll try to connect them with a science class so that the students in that course, right, can make a connection that, oh, I don't just have to think about science in a classroom, the confines of the classroom. And as Rick was saying earlier, that learning that I've just done, I can now apply in the real world. How do I find a co-op placement? This is probably the most asked questions before and after the students are in the classroom. Certainly within that first week, there's a flurry of, oh no, do I need one? Do I have one? Where do I find one? Individual co-op teachers usually have, I would say, like a bank of employers and businesses they've partnered with over the years. So my biggest suggestion to any students is, what do you want to do? Right, so we start with that, because that's the huge difference with co-op, is it's really all about you. This is the time to discover a field, right, a pathway. And even at the end of the 4 months, you tell yourself, I don't want to do that. That is great learning in that, right, one recognition alone. So other co-op teachers, sometimes we ask and we think, okay, we have a student interested in this field. Have you placed anyone there? And usually the co-op teachers are great, bunch of supportive networking people that, yes, they can be like, I'm not using this current employer right now. Why don't you give them a call? Family connections are huge. There's also a good chunk of, my mom's dad is a blank. Can I partner with them and be placed with them? We're like, yes. We just try not to partner with like your family members. So for example, if your dad happens to be a lawyer and you want to be in a law firm, we say, okay, but is there anyone else right within that law firm, or even another law office that you can connect with? So in case some of you are like, oh, I can provide my child with a placement, not technically, but you could certainly provide their friend with one. And then cold calling and inquiries. So there's some that are just areas that we have not partnered with, right, and placed anyone before. And that's also one of the ways we encourage students to take initiative, is to literally open, oh, I was going to say open a phone book. I'm dating myself, but certainly, right, Googling and doing things like optometrist, local optometrist, if someone wants to go into that field and just figure out what that looks like and experience that environment. And we certainly get on that phone and start calling. Some students who really want to make an impression will actually go and do walk-in cold inquiries, where they go into a business. That's also something that's recommended, because it gives you an idea of how long it takes to get there, right? Especially if walking is a factor. So you're like, yes, I'd like a placement close by because I will have to walk for my placement. Those are things that certainly I suggest, and say, that plaza over there has got a number of physiotherapy clinics. There's 2 or 3. If you're keen, why don't you take the weekend to just inquire? So really is, with regards to a placement, if you can get there and they're willing to partner, it's a good placement to be at. And now it's my honor for Mia C., who was a former student from last semester, to share her experience in co-op. Mia.
Thank you, Ms. Valera. Hi, my name's Mia. I'm a student at Iroquois Ridge High School. I'm in grade 11, and I've had a really successful experience with my co-op placement. And I'm here today to kind of share a little bit about it with you guys. So the career that I was interested in pursuing after high school did change slightly before I had completed my placement, in comparison to once I had done the placement. And before I had completed my placement, I knew that I definitely wanted to go into teaching and anything sort of in the sector of education. And once I had done that placement, I realized that I'd actually like to do something more with kindergarten. And prior to it, I was thinking more of a secondary sort of option. So just that in itself, you can already see that kind of once you've completed your placement, it really gives you a better, definitely a lot more insight on what you want to do going forward. My co-op placement was at David R. Williams Public School, and some of my duties and responsibilities at my placement included making lesson plans, supervising outside, supervising the kindergarteners, and doing sanitizing, sweeping, a lot of cleaning, especially since COVID and everything. There's a lot that we had to do with that, organizing documents, reading with them, all sorts of different things. And of course, at the placement, you decide to choose. But I would say that I was definitely had a great experience and I was able to immerse myself within the classroom and I was given a lot of opportunity to feel like I was one of the teachers there as well, which was really nice to have. And what important knowledge and skills did you learn at your placement that influenced your career planning? I'd say that I learned a lot of things, not just about other people, but as well as with myself as an individual. And I think some of the more important knowledge that I learned was just the skills even that come in handy, such as communication and being able to talk with other people and share your ideas and that sort of thing. And honestly, from in terms of career planning, what I learned the most about myself is that I learned exactly what I wanted to be do going forward. And that's the thing with the co-op placement is that sometimes it's really tricky in high school to kind of know what you want to do going forward and know what courses you want to take. And the co-op really just gives you that opportunity to work hands-on in an environment and you can decide going forward whether that's something you'd like to pursue or not. Because if you're not given that opportunity, then sometimes it can be really difficult to decide what you'd like to do. And the advice that I give for other students considering co-op is definitely to have an open mind. It's something that can be a little bit scary at first getting into the program because you don't know exactly what to expect from it. But honestly, just having an open mind and understanding that there will be challenges that you're going to face, just like anything else, but that these challenges are actually going to benefit you and are going to come to your advantage because you're going to learn something from them and you're going to grow as an individual. And it's something that is definitely going to help you going forward into what you want to do with your future careers and all that sort of thing. And any other sort of advice would just be to really just go into it with an open heart and hope for the best. And honestly, it's such an amazing experience. I recommend it to anyone. And it's great because then you don't feel like you don't feel like your mind's jumbled and everything. You have a better sense of what you want to do, and you learn something new about yourself is the most important part. So that's what I have to say about it. Thank you.
So, if you're sitting there and thinking, oh, I'm interested, what do I do next? Here are some things to think about. First, speak with your counselor, right? They can provide you with more information. Sometimes they will even connect you with a co op teacher. So, even knowing that and getting the information straight from your co op teacher within your high schools is a great value. You're going to have to choose a co-op at a course for selection time. If you figure it out after all that information, you're like, yes, definitely I want to be in a co-op course. So these are the course codes to look out for: COP 308 or COP 408. And then you can start brainstorming what field type of placement you'd be interested in. I always like to tell the students, think of your top five. Like if it was an ideal placement, right? Think of those top five and have them ready, because sometimes we have used all five to figure out what placement will suit you the best.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rick and April and Mia, for sharing all that valuable information. And I wanted to mention, especially tied to our last slide where we talked about course selection, picking the COP 308 and the COP 408, and specifically around just figuring out what your interests are. What are those top five for you? We have a really powerful tool in the Halton District School Board called myblueprint.ca/Halton. I hope all of our students watching are nodding their heads and saying, oh yes, I know what that is. We call that our individual pathways planning, or IPP tool, for students in our board as they figure out a plan that's going to help them navigate next steps to their first post-secondary destination, as well as the career that interests them. Students log in when they go into that myblueprint.ca/Halton with their HDSB username and password. Parents can actually set up an account too. If you have questions about that, we'd encourage you to ask your student, Google it, or reach out to your school's guidance department or student success teacher in elementary. And while using that tool, students have access to a number of different features that are very helpful as they navigate those areas of interest. Everything from being able to complete Who Am I interest surveys, using the high school planner, a post-secondary planner that allows them to search programs all across Canada, looking at many different work profiles of various career areas that they might be interested in, building portfolios to be able to save those searches that are of interest to them and to be able to reflect on what they've learned by using the tool, and so much more. So we'd really encourage myblueprint.ca as a powerful tool in pathway planning and in exploring these experiential learning opportunities. So we're now at the end of our presentation, and it's time to ask your questions. I wanted to put the link up again for all of our viewers. It's bit.ly/EL Series Feb 10. We'll give you a few minutes to get your questions in. That's going to take you to a Google form where you can submit a question that you might be wondering about based on what you've learned today. I'm going to keep monitoring the form here as we go through this question period, and I know there's going to be some questions coming in. And I'm actually going to start with the first one that I see here. And I'm going to direct that over to you, Rick. And a student has asked, what if I don't actually like my placement? What if I start out in a placement and it turns out it's just not my thing? What would you say to that?
First of all, great question. Yeah, I'd say you're never stuck in anything. If you're not happy with your placement, there's definitely a process. It's a real job, so we can't just walk out. We do have some responsibilities there. So we work through a process of giving the employer some leeway or some lead time that it's just not working out, and we will draft up a letter together. We'll work through some of those sort of how we can leave a placement without burning a bridge. So it's all about networking, and you never know if you would like to use that contact down the road. And then once we've taken care of that respectfully and responsibly, then we jump into the job search, and we begin the process over again and start to evaluate, okay, what went wrong and why didn't we like that placement? And as Mia was saying, sometimes you really find out that that's exactly what you want to do. But just as importantly, if you find out that it's not something you're interested in, it's way better to find out now in high school before you've spent money and time towards a degree or a diploma. So yeah, if you need to make that change, there's definitely ways in which that can happen. And that's what your co-op teachers are there for, to help you through those learning processes of what the real world of work is like.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to direct this next question over to you, April. And a student from White Oak Secondary School is asking, what happens if you just can't find a placement at all? You've been trying, you've been following the suggestions of your co-op teacher, and you just don't have any luck. What happens then?
We will try to reassess. I don't actually remember a student not finding one. And then it becomes also a moment of flexibility, right? So sometimes students come in with a list of 5 and they go, nope, I just want to do this. And we go, okay, at this point, right, the choices are to look for the ones that are available to apply to, or maybe a change in the subject. And you can do it, right? You could possibly do it next semester or even next year. I know for some students who reach out around grade 10, when they've heard about it, our guidance head does a really good job when she goes in during course selections to do a little PR. I let them know, I'm like, if you're thinking of a placement, right, like ideal ones, like hospitals or those things that to get the full experience, you want to be there for longer than the 2 periods. I'm like, get all your electives out of the way, right? Because the minute get all of your compulsories out of the way, because that
Mhm.
opens up a lot more for the electives. And yeah, sometimes students are doing full day co-op, like first semester of their grade 12, and they're already, like Rick said, in the world of work. Like it's a 9 to 5 type of thing. And like that's the best experience, right? Because you're there for the full day. But there's lots of ways to go about that. Yeah. At the end of the day, you might just have to switch out for co-op, right? And then just come back another time and another semester.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, the questions are just pouring in now, which is fantastic. I'm going to direct this next one actually to you, Mia. So a student is asking you specifically, what did you find to be the most challenging part of your placement? Despite the fact that you had a really positive experience, was there anything about doing co-op that you found to be tough?
Yes, of course, there's always challenges everywhere you go, and I'd say that there was a couple. One of the biggest ones for me was definitely all of the changes with COVID. I started off my placement going there for the full day, and it was something that I really enjoyed. So I'd have my week with every day full day, and then I'd have my other week where I'd have my 2 courses, and it was difficult to have that transition from going there for the full day and then going there for only half the day or for a few hours, because it's definitely not the exact same experience, and you kind of get used to having that routine and that sort of thing. And so for that, I'd say it was definitely a challenge. But it's something that made me more appreciative for being there, because I got used to having those full days and I loved it. And another challenge, of course, is just kind of the differentiation between being sitting in a classroom and being very hands-on. My co-op personally was very hands-on, and it can be very tiring, but it's definitely very rewarding. And for that reason, it was another thing that I had to really look, and I noticed that there was definitely a lot more pros than cons. So I I had a good time.
That's fantastic. Excellent. And I know one thing I wanted to mention, thank you, Mia, for that, from our previous question too, just in case students may not know, co-op, depending on what courses you've already done, can actually count as both compulsory credits toward your Ontario Secondary School Diploma, or if you've met all those compulsory requirements, it can count as electives. So lots of flexibility there in what co-op can do for you as you work toward graduation. Okay, our next question I'm going to pass over to you, Rick. And there's a grade 9 student who's asking, how does co-op work with our classes? Do we take it at the same time slots as we would regular classes?
Is the question, or is the panel, are we thinking, are they asking, do we take it during the regular school day?
I think that's what's meant there.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So the answer for the most part is a yes, but it can also be no. And I'll explain that. So typically when we talk of day school co-op, we're talking either a morning or an afternoon. So typically, I know our high school this year is set up with 4 periods, a period 1, 2, and then we have a lunch, and then a period 3, 4. So we have 2 classes running right now. One is running period 1, 2, and then the other class is running period 3, 4. So there is that transition period over your lunch hour where you either have to start at work and then go till about 10:40-ish, and then you have until noon to get your transportation back to school for your afternoon classes, or you're in your classes in the morning. You have 2 classes, regular classes in the morning, then you have your lunch hour to then transition to get to your placement. So that's what we would call day school co-op. We also, the board offers night school co-op, which is an option. So that's a co-op that typically runs after school hours, so after that 4 p.m., let's say. And then our SHSM, our specialist high skills major students have access, and there's some other specialty groups that have access to summer co-op, which runs during our summer school block, typically July.
Great, thank you. That was a multi-part answer. So
yeah, sorry.
I appreciate that. That was well done. You mentioned transportation, so I'm going to jump to a question about that, and I'll bring that over to you, April. Someone's asking, how do students get a co-op If they can't get there by a ride from their family or the bus route doesn't take them, what are the options in terms of how students actually physically get to an in-person co-op placement?
And now I know this is an exceptional case, but Mia actually, right, just with the flip and not being able to have enough, was Ubering for I think the last last few weeks, Mia, right, of your um, placement. But that's one option. It's an expensive option, but it is one that a number of students have resorted to over the years. Usually, we try to work with you. So what's one of the top questions we ask, right? Do you have access to a vehicle? Are you comfortable with taking public transportation? Because if the answer is no to either of those, then we know, okay, we're looking for someplace local, someplace you can walk to. Because that, like, even the stress of that, right? If we can alleviate that and still have you in a placement that's enriching for you and that you can get a lot of learning from, like, it's kind of a happy medium for everybody. But yes, if it's transportation, we get that right out of the way and ask, because it's an important one, right? Even in the world of work, period. Like, there's many teachers are like, I can't work in Scarborough. I'll never get there in time for class, right? And they go, sorry, thank you for the full-time job offer, but I'm looking to stay within the Halton region. So it's a very reasonable and valid concern.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm going to throw a second part onto that question, which we haven't talked about too much yet, but has actually become more and more relevant in the last couple of years. And that is virtual co-op placements, which mean that transportation isn't an issue. April, would you be able to just speak a little bit to what that can look like for students?
Yes, I got so excited because we were back in like regular classrooms that I forgot the virtual experience. A lot of the employers, especially the ones I find whose companies are like social media based, have offered virtual employment and placements. Just within the past semester, we have a tutoring company that they just deal with virtual appointments even when they're tutoring. So if transportation is an issue, right, then we will try to connect you with those virtual placements. Thanks, Lisa. I did forget about the virtual.
Yeah, no problem. And we actually just had a question come in about how do the online co-ops work, and you know, I can jump in here just to add on to what April had said. But really, it depends on the employer how that's set up. Typically, the students are working the same hours that they would be working if they were in person, but they are now working from home or they are working from school virtually. It's pretty common for that employer to do a check-in with the student at the beginning of their time, just to make sure that the student knows what they're working on, feels ready for the day and whatever the tasks are. And then the student gets to work. And sometimes there's a check-in again before they leave for the day. But it definitely does require some more independent skills, most often from the student as they're engaging in that virtual work. But there's still absolutely a support and supervision and mentoring that comes from that virtual co-op employer. And really interestingly, you know, one of the silver linings perhaps of COVID is that it's opened the door as well to where that employer may be based. So, you know, you could have an employer that's based in Toronto or in London or in Windsor or wherever, and you're still working for them even though you live in Milton. So again, some really interesting opportunities that have come up from virtual co-ops, which weren't so much a thing before COVID came along. So great. Thank you for the question. So many questions coming in. I am going to send this back to you, Rick. The question is, where would a student get a listing of the businesses or placements that are available in the board or the school? Does that listing exist?
I don't know board wide, but I know that at our school we do. I'm new to the role, so new in terms of a couple years. So I've started collecting a list that I have, and every time I'm out on placement, and when we talk of cold calling and dropping into placements as a tool for students finding co-op jobs, I'm doing the same thing as I'm driving around. And if I have a placement visit to do and I see an interesting business, sometimes I walk in and ask for a business card. So I've started collecting some contact lists there and some business cards. And then I have that available for students in my class to kind of peruse through and say, hey, historically we've these are where some kids went. It was a family connection here, but hey, they've taken a co-op student on before, so why don't we try that avenue again? So most of your co-op teachers in your buildings will have, again, I'll date myself, but a Rolodex uh, of contacts that they've used in the past. Yeah, I mean, your best resource, everyone out there, students and parents listening, is to connect with your co-op teacher in the building that your child is in, and they will be able to direct you to if and where that list would be provided at your school, because it'll be different, right? It'll be different for Oakville students. It'll be different for Burlington students, and certainly students in the north, where the geography is a little bit more spread out. So.
Yeah, great answer, Rick. And I'll just mention that from a board perspective, we do have a number of different placements that are sometimes cultivated by the board and another organization that we rely on, the Halton Industry Education Council. Those placements, as they arise, which can vary from semester to semester, are shared directly with the co-op teachers to then share with their students. So they're not shared directly with students and families. It happens through the teachers, but the teachers have access to that information and then can then share the opportunities with students, just so that you know how that works. So many questions, and I'm mindful of the time, so I think we can squeeze in a couple more. April, I'm going to send this one to you. A parent is asking, how are special needs managed for students? So for example, if a student had an individual education plan, we wanted to make sure that the employer was aware of that so that they could support the student appropriately. Mm-hmm. How does that work?
We usually ask first, right, if that's something we could share with the employer. And then as we connect with the employer, I know for me, having done co-op for a number of years, the employer kind of would say, what do you know about that student? And that's the opportunity for us to say, like, okay, these are the things they need. They might need support with this. And I find most of the employers are like, okay, they just want to know. So, and they're very supportive once that is shared with them. But it does start with speaking with the parent and the student. Sometimes there's also the other side of that where they don't want us to share. So we want to make sure, right, that that's something we can share. And then my experience has always been when an employer knows, they do their best to meet those needs. So it's always been kind of copacetic with the two, trying to just be of value to one another.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to send this one over to you again, April, and also Mia can speak to this too, because I know you shared something before we went on air today about how positive the experience was. But someone's asking, is it possible to actually extend a co-op placement if somebody wanted more experience, or if that student wanted to stay on, let's say, for community involvement hours, or in some capacity? Can the student keep working with the employer if the employer is so pleased with them that they'd like them to stay in some capacity?
I think Rick answered this too, that, right, like sometimes they'd hire them. I know one student loved doing auto stuff with Canadian Tire, and I didn't realize by the second week, as soon as our school ends at 2:45, at 3:00, he was on the clock for Canadian Tire and being paid. So yes, the opportunity is always there. Some people have come back. So after a semester, another student who was helping out with a retirement home, that was her community hours. So she was there for first semester, and then second semester, they figured out between her and the supervisor that she can come back twice a week and get that done. Like, yes, there's always the opportunity to extend or to have a job offer or to do volunteer hours. It's just a matter of checking in with your supervisor. I find they're usually quite upfront with that. Like, they will say, oh, anytime you need a job, come back here. Or if you need community hours, they actually will present it to you as a student before you can even think of, like, oh, yeah, I need community hours. I'll do it here. I've already been trained, or I'm already familiar with the place. So that's, I find, always a yes.
Can I jump in too? Just another extension too, and some may be wondering, you can do co-op more than once. So if you've enjoyed a placement and it was grade 11, let's say, you can come back in grade 12 and continue at that same placement or try a new opportunity. So co-op is one of those courses that you can do it several or multiple times if you're looking to extend and earn credits as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for mentioning that. And I apologize. There are so many questions that come in, and I just have time for one more. So I am going to pick, oh, wow, there's so many. I'm going to ask about, someone's asked about that process of doing a cold call or a walk-in. So you're interested in an employer, they have never had a co-op student, but you want to ask that question of would they be willing to take you on? What would your advice be? And feel free for anyone on the panel to jump in with those suggestions.
I know I draw on my background. I'm going to jump in first and do a little bit of drama. So I've actually done role playing as an activity in our class. So there's a script, and there's even like so I always ask them, right, like good evening, good afternoon, to start with that if they're cold calling on the phone or in person, and just to present them. I'm a student from blank school, looking for a co-op placement. Do you take co-op students? Like we role play that, and I'm looking at physically in my brain right now. We have the worksheet, and it has like the yes, and then they go, okay, this is what happens when it's a yes, and then when it's a no, and they go, oh, okay, thank you, and we rehearse that enough, and I always leave it up to the students. I'm right beside them if they need me, or to even say like, you can wait a day, you can wait 2 days until you're comfortable to make that. Sometimes I actually will make the call with them or be on the other end of that phone. So I'll say, okay, call the cell, call my cell right now. I'm like, I'll be on the other side of the classroom. Okay. Right. Or I'll be back to back. So I'm close, and just to get their confidence up. Because even for me, I know when Rick was saying when they do cold calling, I still feel that like, oh, okay, I don't want to come off too aggressive. And it is an interesting place to be. So yeah, so I understand like the nerves and the anxiety with that. So for the co-op classroom, I do tend to revert back to some drama skills of like role playing and rehearsing and all that, and all those preparatory steps before we actually call someone and inquire in real time and for real.
Fantastic. That's great. Anything to add, Rick?
Yeah, I actually did a whole mock thing this morning with a student that's has all the skills, just a little nervous about, walking in, and she was asking, is there a benefit to a phone call versus walking in? And, I'm always of the mind it's harder to blow a student off if they're in your face in the office. So we went through that process, and yeah, it was walking in, highlighting I'm a co-op student. I'm involved with this particular program. I'm interested in this field. Sometimes the students are actually maybe even a patient. They've gone to physio at that facility, and that's what motivated them to get involved or pique the interest in that particular career. So mentioning all those things, and then backing it up with if they need to speak with their co-op teacher, that the co-op teacher can follow up with a phone call to talk to the employer about what the employer's responsibilities are. I also have a letter that I have available for the students to take with them about what is the employer's responsibility in all of this if they have questions, and they can follow up that way as well. But certainly your co-op teachers are always there, either in the background, a phone call away, or to be able to go right to that first meeting with you. So reach out to your co-op teachers.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to everyone on the panel today, April, Rick, and Mia, for sharing your wisdom and your experience with all of our viewers. Really valuable. There's so much to learn about when it comes to cooperative education, and so many opportunities too. I'm sorry to those who submitted questions that we couldn't get to. I'd really encourage you to reach out to your local high school or your high school and speak to your co-op teacher if you're looking for more information. And you can also access information on the Halton District School Board website, hdsb.ca. You can just search cooperative education and find more information there. You can also reach out directly to me, Lisa Galley, at GALAYL@hdsb.ca. That's GALAYL@hdsb.ca. Thank you to all of our students and our families that were viewing today. We look forward to seeing you next week for our session on cover letters and resumes.